Thank you all very much. We will call to order our May 12th, 2026 meeting. We'll entertain any modifications to the agenda. Hearing none, we'll continue on with our next agenda item, which is the receiving and hearing of delegates, our public comment period. And we do have a student who signed up. Lionel, I am unsure of how to pronounce your last name.
It's Margolin.
Thank you, Margolin. Yeah. Thank you. And Lionel, if you'd be happy to join us, it just helps the microphones pick it up.
I just need to sign into the Wi-Fi.
Understood, absolutely. And I will be sure to also forward the email that you sent to the policy committee to make sure all board members receive that as well.
That's great.
And while Lionel is logging onto the Wi-Fi, let me make a public apology to Lionel, who has emailed me over the past 2 weeks, directly in the middle of Ithaca College finals, as some other folks may know. So I've been unable to respond, but I greatly appreciate your diligence in letting me know that I have not responded. That's fantastic. It's been noted and well received.
Thank you so much. You said there's a microphone or something?
Yeah, the microphones are here. Just cast it's better if we had people sit at the tables. That's all. So thank you so much.
Hi. So I am Lionel Margolin. I am the External Affairs Coordinator for the Superintendent Student Advisory Council. So I'm just going to give you a little kind of crash course on what we are and then talk about how we relate to the policies that you're going to discuss today. So the SSAC, which is what we call it, is a group of around 25 appointed students that conduct inquiry and deliberate to produce formal recommendations on district policy. And there are many ways in which this promotes diversity, since the members are actually appointed and therefore don't come under constraints of the election process, which could have issues in representing everyone equally. We also believe that this process promotes the voices of quieter, less communicative, and less confident students, because instead of coming to a big board meeting, they only have to talk in a 25-ish person body in an informal discussion, or even in kind of breakout groups, and still get to contribute to these things. And the important point here is that the goal of this selection process is not to produce a perfectly representative group of the whole student body at the secondary level. It's to create an organization that's capable of doing important work to find different perspectives and assemble recommendations. And for these reasons, we believe that the SSAC is suited well for work on longer term, deep cutting issues, because its process involves months of discussion, revision, and compromise on these issues. So it's less able to respond to things quickly, but it's able to cut deeper into them. And we want to make it absolutely clear that the SSAC is in no way some kind of contradictory mode of student representation to board reps. It's a complementary one, because each of us covers the other one's weaknesses, which I'll get to soon. So I also want to say that
I'm going to tell you, normally we allow 3 minutes. We're going to give you a couple more minutes because you're here and of all the time and energy that you put into this.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. The rest of it is pretty short. We believe that the current board rep system that we've had for the past year has been insufficient due largely to the systems of the way that it works on a basic level. Elections simply do not reach all parts of the community. There's obviously communication issues with that, but also like if you're only going to select however many board members, ex officios, student reps, that's only that many people to represent the whole community. Board reps are designed to comment on specific issues at a specific time and not as capable with these systems to work on deeper ones over time. And we also believe that adequate representation, especially at IHS, is essentially impossible. 1,300 students with what we have 4 board reps this year, that's not possible. So we believe that we need a multimodal system of representation at the district level, both to the board and to the superintendent, just in general. So that's why we believe that it could be valuable to have some elected ex officio members as well as some appointed members, which could help us to fill in those gaps that the board reps are seeing right now. Yeah. If anybody has any questions, feel free to email me at any time. Yeah.
I will forward that email around to all board members.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Nobody else is scheduled to speak. Board responses.
I just appreciate you for sharing. I've always sort of had wonderings about benefits of election versus appointing. And I think you've nicely highlighted that tension. So given me and I assume others a lot of
Appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate that as well. And also I'm very excited about multimodal systems. So I appreciate your bringing attention to that and the value that it offers to just look at things in different ways and not only use one methodology. So I think that that's a good thing to point out in first instance.
Any other board responses?
Well, thank you very much, Lionel. You'd stated that the board rep process has been in existence for 1 year. The governor's requirement has been in existence for 1 year. Ithaca is unlike other school districts here that we have had this policy from 2013. The superintendent, you said S8, S8?
We call it the SSAC.
Okay, Superintendent Advisory Council, acronyms going back and forth, right? But I'm familiar with it because my daughter was on the Superintendent's Advisory Council.
Yeah.
I thought it was a beneficial and continue to think it's a great council that my hopes is always, as it was before, and continues to be reaching the masses within the within IHS. I agree with the election process of the student reps at the moment, because I think, and you said it should complement, both groups should complement one another, and both groups should be working together to hear from the students and to hear from the voices of the students, just like when the Tatler produces articles, one would hope that they're representing the students in the articles that they produce. So, yeah, I think 1,300 students, the 4 board reps, the 25 student advisory council members, there is something that both groups should get together as well as other groups, because you also have your clubs too. Your clubs are representing the student body and how is information being disseminated. So we would hope that through the various vehicles that information and the beauty about the superintendent advisory council is that there's some issues and concerns that the superintendent might bring up as well as the students may bring up, and you get to explore and see behind the scenes of what's happening within the school district. I remember when my daughter was part of the group, they went to the transportation department, and that opened their eyes at exactly how the transportation department was running, why snow days were called when they were, and it really brought some light to the students in that they didn't complain about the delay of transportation when they saw the whole bus routes and all across Ithaca, what the transportation department has to do. But thank you very much for your continued involvement in this and other areas.
Thanks.
I just want to go on record to thank Lionel and Andrew. Is that correct? Right? Lionel and Andrew have attended 5, 6, 15 meetings on this topic alone, have given incredible, thoughtful input, have done outreach to other students, have both used the advisory council, have met with board members, have met with administration. It's really a phenomenal example of sort of participation in a school district's policy making. And so I know I feel like I can speak on behalf of the policy committee and just offer a tremendous thanks that that labor and that work did not go unrecognized. And I believe you will see, hopefully, it will be reflected in what we intend to be the final policy as well. So we'll get to that point in time when the time arises. But again, as two students who have done amazing labor, I want to make sure that we recognize and thank you for that as well. So thank you both. Greatly appreciate it. Fantastic. Okay, that will bring us to, that policy will be up on the agenda momentarily. Bring us to our student reps. Bo, you have the great fortune of being the sole representative for today. So welcome.
Okay, all right, first, I just want to start sharing my appreciation for Lionel. I certainly think that SSAC is especially useful at IHS. Now, it is of course going to be useful at our school. However, I think that to some degree it is not quite as necessary given that we are such a small integrated school community. But regardless, I certainly think I can try and speak for my absent board members in saying that I think we are excited to work with you guys and alongside you guys in the future because it's true that the systems are complementary and do not necessarily clash with each other. Moving on, as I've mentioned several times now, we have trips coming up, but now it's next week. So after next meeting, I'll be glad to report to you how Spain was. I'm kind of excited about that. As for board representation, we have our elections coming up in the following few weeks. But importantly, tomorrow, I want to highlight that we are having a discussion in our all-school meeting about diversity in that election and how that we can elect a diverse group of group two, but how we can diversely elect them so that we are as representative as possible, including electing students from different backgrounds. With that being said, I'd also like to thank each and every member of the policy committee for working so diligently with us and others to create a wonderfully written ex officio student board rep policy. I personally haven't attended those meetings, but regardless, I know that the other members of my team have and are quite thankful for that. This is coming from the mouth of Julian. He could not attend today, but he wanted to personally mention that he was glad to have voted in this election. I am personally not of the age to do so, but he wanted to share that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bo. Board responses. I'll say I begin by making sure that Julian wears his I voted sticker to the next board meeting. We'll have one available. Other board responses?
Just thank you. Always. Have a safe and enjoyable trip.
Certainly will try.
Okay, hearing none, we'll continue on with our agenda. Thank you, Bo. We'll move us to the consent agenda and we'll entertain motions.
We move to approve all consent agenda items listed in consent agenda, personnel report, and minutes of previous meetings presented.
Second.
Moved by Adam, second by Jacob. Questions, conversation, debate? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. We'll continue on with our agenda to school district business, which is an athletic merger with Owego Free Academy for varsity girls field hockey for next academic school year, starting in fall 2026. We will entertain motions.
I move to approve athletic merger with the Owego Free Academy for girls varsity field hockey for the 2026-2027 school year.
Second.
Moved by Adam, second by Jacob. Questions, conversation, debate, dialogue? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor? That motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. It moves us to one of two policies that I believe we have on the docket for this evening. This one will probably take the most conversation or try to bring the board up to speed. That is agenda item 7.2. This is a revision of the current policy that the district has had in place, as Karen says, since 2013. Though it warrants saying that the Board of Education, the Ithaca City School District, has had student reps on be present at the board table since before 2000. I believe 1999, 1998 is the first year. That is notable for a couple of reasons. One, I think it speaks to the way in which the board has historically believed the role of student voice, but it also has implications by way of the governor's mandate that allows us as a small city school district to do some things that we otherwise would not have been able to do because we are grandparented into a process. We have the ability to keep our process or change our process completely. I will ask for Madeline and for Emily to share. But before we do this, maybe we entertain motions. I believe this is a first reading. Even while some things may be taking place at different schools, it is possible that this will come back to the board policy committee. But let's entertain motions first, and then we'll give some additional context.
I move to approve the resolution for the first reading of the draft policy title 2245, student ex officio members of the Board of Education.
Moved by Adam, seconded by Jacob. This policy came down with the governor's budget last August. Again, thankfully, the city school district board has already had a policy in place for student reps. And we've been working on various versions of this, meeting with the administration of both LACS and Ithaca High School. I should make note that the student ex officio member only applies to high school students. Those are the only members that are outlined specifically in the governor's legislation. And we've had, I think it's been on almost every policy committee agenda since probably last August, if not before then. After multiple rounds of conversation, questions about representation, questions about the fairness of holding school-wide elections, question about the role of an ex officio member. Is it to sort of be, for lack of a better word, sort of a school board internship? Is it supposed to be student advocacy role? Is it to be an official ex officio member? We've been round and round all of these conversations and debates. And I think where the board has ended up is trying to merge student voice, which was very clear about maintaining an advocacy role from a student perspective. And then at our last policy committee, Emily, myself, not the last one, 2 policy committees ago, Emily, myself, and Madeline decided that it may not be the board's purview to tell Ithaca High School or LACS what the exact process should be, but rather to work with the administration of LACS and Ithaca High School and having them develop a process that takes into consideration things like representation, the role of elections, whatever that may be. And so the way in which the policy is currently written after all that, I think it's gone from like 6 pages to 4 pages down to 2 pages, which is that the board asks the leadership of each school to develop a policy, then informing the board what that policy is. And going back to our original version of that would be 4 reps from Ithaca High School, 2 reps from LACS, just by way of sheer numbers, and then working with the administration of each building to be able to develop a process that is fair, equitable, and as representative as possible, acknowledging that we would not be able to do so, and maybe trying to think about some other modes of communication. I think, as Lionel so eloquently stated, where the complementary organizations and groups are in dialogue together. So that's a quick overview. Emily and Madeline, I know I missed something, additions, things that you would add, and then we'll entertain questions from board members.
Yeah, I'm trying to think so I don't repeat anything that you just said. I guess I just want to reiterate that we really did go like across the gamut with everything. And I think that the thing that we realized is that even in our conversations that there was a lot of responsibility that the discussions themselves we're putting on these 4 or 7 total members of our student reps to really take on so much responsibility to make sure that they are bringing a diverse perspective from all students within their schools. Obviously, just for size, if nothing else, like if the high school was the focal point of those discussions, and realizing that our intense desire to want to make sure that the perspectives that were brought from these few board reps was really representative of the entire student body. And I think that one of the reasons that we were having such a hard time with it is we realized that, especially in our roles, which are pretty removed from the school building, that we have very little actual control or ability to kind of help facilitate and foster that. Which is why, although our approach now is putting a lot more onus on building leaders, I think that it creates I was hoping that it would create opportunities for them to really look within the buildings that they spend all of their time to be able to identify the most effective ways of reaching as many students as possible. And hearing the conversations even about board reps and SSAC, and I appreciated Karen's, raising about different clubs that are already at the school and the student government. Like there's already so many groups of students that are coming together for a multitude of different reasons. And so I am hoping, and I think that kind of as we discussed that it would be, we would really like to see building leadership and the advisors, especially at IHS, for the reps and the reps themselves to be the ones that can think about how to partner with and utilize all of these different leaders of all of these different student groups to be able to reach as many people as possible. So though it will be more work, I think it's an exciting opportunity for some partnership between administration and students to think creatively about how to reach so many more students and to be able to bring those all of those perspectives to us.
Madeline, any additions?
Not really. It's been a long process for sure. I do appreciate the commitment of the SSHC leaders. I'm hoping that this serves as like where other students can just see you guys being engaged and being able to be part of the conversations and the discussions being had and be a good example for others to be involved. Yeah, that's like the whole goal for me at the very least. Encouraging, there you go, that's the word.
Yeah, Madeline, and I really want to thank you and Emily as well for having a focus on raising the concern continually about representation. And that there is a need for us to hear. I know I've said it regularly, people say to me all the time, like, the Ithaca community, and I say respectfully, there are multiple Ithaca communities, depending, and when the same thing happens at the high school, there are multiple communities within the high school. Even as small as LACS is, there are still multiple communities within the LACS. And so we're not be able to reach all those communities, but keeping that at the forefront of who is not in the room is equally as important as who is in the room. So I want to thank folks for constantly raising that as well. So let's step back for a second. This is a first reading. It will come back to the policy committee, then back to the board. Again, we know that there's some things that need to take place between now and then as well as elections are happening. But let's entertain questions from some board members and see where we may find ourselves.
I have a few questions. So the change would be in terms of student participation. So for example, like right now, student reps speak at the beginning of the meeting, but now they would be full participants throughout the, is that accurate?
That has always been the case.
Okay.
It just happens depending on who is serving in the student rep role. Some student reps have speak during meetings. They do get the privilege of the floor should the president or whoever is in the role acknowledge that. But yes, there still may be, I would assume, board student ex officio report out and the ability to speak during deliberations.
And then I know that you referenced around 1,300 students at the high school. I actually don't know how many high schoolers are there at LACS.
High schoolers? That is a good question, and I actually think I might have to get back to you on that, because I always have the full number, like the full student enrollment number rattling around. But if I had to guess, it would be somewhere in the realm of close to up just over 100.
Okay, that, I guess then for me, that raises the question, why, I guess, why 2 representatives from LACS? No disrespect to LACS, I just, if we're thinking about part of the goal is representation, once 2 students representing 100 and 4 students representing 1,300 seems.
These are all questions that we debated multiple times, round and round. It's historically currently has been 3 from LACS. That happened during COVID, where there was an additional person. So the question, we felt 4 still is too much, but didn't feel that this was the time to change it. And so maybe the question is at some point in time, 3 and 1. I still would be a fan of at least 2 students coming from a school to bring at least multiple perspectives. So it's not a sheer ratio numbers game. We just had a conversation about what it would be. And our original policy from 2013 does say 4 student reps from Ithaca High School and 2 student reps from LACS.
So I just wanted to add that it's kind of that representation piece. Like when the change from 1 to 2 and 2 to 3 is massive, because like 1 to 2 students is the change from a single voice, a single thought, to 2 people that are able to think and add on to each other's thoughts, and the amount of, like, not to say to cover a community, but in terms of like the students' direct representation of a community is much larger when it's 2 people rather than 1.
It's 132.
Thank you. I was just looking as well.
Thank you.
Jacob, did you have other?
I'm good for it.
One of the things that we have talked in the majority of the conversations about having like a designee who was going to be the person, the student rep who was going to be speaking. That's not, I think, reflected in this version. I think partially because we jumped around so much and we're thinking about so many more complicated versions of this beforehand, so it might have just gotten dropped. But I think that there's been like pretty consistent recognition that we can't have 6 members who are speaking, who are participating in the discussions the whole time. So we will need to go back to that, and some of the things that we threw around ideas from having reps either be assigned to or take turns attending committee meetings, and having one person, one rep from each school being the one that was like speaking at that general board meeting. And so, or sometimes at one point we talked about like, would somebody be like assigned that role for the year and actually take on a little bit more of a leadership role within their school of helping all of this work get done. We also talked about, I think that from students' perspective, we heard a lot more of a desire to like take turns. So that is something that I'm sure the policy committee would love people's input on as we all think about it more about the best way to do that, but acknowledging that we can't add an additional 6 people to every debate.
I wouldn't be in favor of us requiring them to be participating in committees because they have a heavy workload. As it is, it's optional if they want to take that one, but I wouldn't want to see that written into a policy.
Yeah, we went round and round about that, thinking about time commitment as well, what it prevents. A number of our reps are involved in theater productions or athletic competitions. So that was a concern, but I do want to reiterate Emily's comment about one of the conversations we did have was at the beginning of each meeting, would one rep from each school be designated as the official ex-official member for that meeting, meaning that they would be the person who would have the privilege of the floor if they had something to say about agenda item. That would help make it much more manageable for whoever's facilitating the meeting. And so that is not reflected in the policy, but that was a conversation that the policy committee did have.
And is it the intention to add that language, or is there?
At this point, what we fell back on is at this point in time, it has not proved itself to be a significant concern. Again, depending on the year, particular student reps or groups of student reps have been more vocal or not as vocal, or have communicated via email prior to, and so it's currently not in the policy. That is, it's the board's decision whether it is in the policy or not.
I think it's worth considering, and I also, I think that the messaging for student reps has been very inconsistent about whether they are or are not able to speak and to participate, and so I don't think that there would be broad agreement among them that, and I don't want to speak for them, this is my guess, that that people on this as student reps would not necessarily feel like they understood whether they can participate or always had the opportunity to, and so I don't know whether we can really judge like how much they would.
I would just, I appreciate that, and I'd like to acknowledge that there's been some transitions and changes over the past 2 years. That there has been clarity in the past. There may not be clarity over the past 2 years, or maybe even since COVID, for that matter. And I would ask our board members to take a look at LACS's handbook for student reps, which is a extremely well done document. It was emailed to you at one point in time. We can get it back out to everybody. And so that it already seems like in many regards, LACS has already done most of this work and has it ready to go. We may have to work and give our high school administration a little bit more time, because this is a new approach. I think they've been waiting for direction from the board, and at the last minute, we're like, we're going to ask it from you. So we have to be patient in that regard. But you had your hand up, or you're going to say
I
something?
was just gonna say, I was going to just to add that it has been slightly unclear for us, but we've kind of worked through that and just kind of trial by error.
Yeah.
But I would like to see a little bit of clarity, just so we're, especially for incoming board reps, just so that they are 100% sure of what their allowed degree of participation is.
The current policy does state that they're able to participate, they just cannot vote. That is in the current policy, but yes, we can get much more clarity. And I say this with great admiration. Julian regularly participates in our deliberations.
And something like that could also be part of like a process flow. It doesn't have to be in the policy to dictate who represents each school and share out.
But if that's something of the will of the board, the next policy committee could create a sentence that says something that, and not necessarily put it in, but present it from the board if that's something that folks would like us to.
Well, that's also, Karen, we talked a lot about, kind of setting an expectation with building leaders about basically creating something similar to what LACS has, but really to make sure that, that the board has an opportunity to see like, what is the election process that you designed, and like, can you show us kind of how you're really leaning into making sure that it's, you know, getting a representative sample, or what are the processes that you've put in place in order to show that you're, you know, helping students connect with one another and different things like that. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity, and maybe that's another not alternative, but an additional like sentence about something. Honestly, I can't remember. I know we talked about it. I'm not sure it's here, but like to make sure that the board can kind of like check in on those things and say like, where are these processes, and like, do they kind of reflect the general ethos of what we're putting into the policy?
I think here is also where these two conversations combine. So if the idea being, and I am in favor of a sort of half election at IHS and a half appointment at IHS. But the question becomes then about representation. And so if we're only identifying one person to be the official ex officio member to speak, they may not be speaking, you know, they're speaking from one particular perspective that may not provide an alternative perspective. So we're trying to balance, what does that mean? And if the facilitator of a meeting, or if the facilitation of a meeting is not going well, then we may need to limit who's able to speak. But it was clear from the policy committee members and other folks who were present that hearing from students is an extremely valuable source of information for decision making. And we are trying to find ways not to limit that, but also not to make it so overwhelming where it stops the meeting, right? Or stops an agenda item. And so that was the balance. You all did a phenomenal job of advocating for yourselves about how important your voice is. And so we were trying to honor that student advocate voice. And figuring out how to do that, or saying to other people, you go figure out how to do it and bring it back to us.
I remember in the NISBA summer training orientation conference, whatever it was, there was a session on this, and I feel like what they talked about that really struck me, and I'm curious the degree to which this has been a conversation or what our thoughts are, was that there were systems within the school to sort of like over time build up towards board prep, where it was sort of like mentorship stuff in like ninth grade and or like eighth grade, ninth grade, etc. Always similar to like a superintendent's group. And they did, I mean, for what it's worth, they did, at least the model district that shared with us talked about the importance of appointing as opposed to elections, because of, I think it was like, because they were viewing it as a more, I think, as like an internship and a leadership responsibility, and also because of the tendency for high school elections to not necessarily lead to a representative sample, in as far as it's even possible to have a representative sample, which I would argue it's not. But I'm just curious if
7 months of those conversations.
yeah, so then I guess then I guess I do want to know more about then why we would be leaving the process to the individual school as opposed to saying that we want want a selection process, or are we saying that, or is the intention to say we think there's value in both?
We feel there's value in both, and students have advocated for both. They've advocated for both the election process as well as an appointment process. There is some concern about an appointment process, right? Who appoints who? What does that mean again as well? So you can't go. It's. I think the idea of having a multimodal or a bimodal approach was the conversation. The board, the policy committee began by thinking of it more sort of an internship, sort of a leadership role building up. There was a little bit of pushback again about time commitment, about additional responsibilities in addition to academics. We're listening to that as well. And I don't know what the model district was, but the legislation does allow for an election by the whole student body. And so that is one of the options that is available. And usually small city school districts are not allowed that unless they've had a policy in place prior to 2013, or actually it's prior to 2007, I want to say it is. So that's why we figured we would keep with that conversation. But the questions you're raising, Jacob, I would humbly ask for folks to go back and take a look at the board summaries. These are conversations we had over and over and over again.
Yeah, I'll just add that Catherine Sernier joined us for a couple of the meetings, and I know that this was an important sticking point for her. And I don't want to speak on her behalf, but I think that she voiced some strong.
Oh, here.
Oh,
hey. Would you like to, I know that you
About which piece?
about the election, why you felt the election process, like the democratic process of having an election, seemed important to you.
I mean, I think that overall, I was really listening to students talking about their desire for process, and knowing that the two schools have very different cultures, and knowing that when you are not embedded in a community, that there's, and especially when we're talking about young people and adults, that there is a certain level of power that people who are not part of the community determining how the people of a community should elect the people to represent them did not feel adequately representative, or it got a little icky. So
I'll rephrase it if I can, Catherine. What I heard students saying is that a lack of an election would also take away their voice, right? That they should have the freedom and the flexibility to also elect who represents them, in addition to appoint a possible appointment. That was the conversation that took place. LACS has been doing this already. They have a different process via their all school meetings, and so we were primarily talking about Ithaca High School at that point in time, and that's where the superintendent student advisory council also gave input as well about, and that's supporting both, right? Both and can work. It's never going to be perfect. That part we know, but that's what we're trying to present.
thank you to the committee and to the students and everyone for their work. I only have 7 more questions.
Well, I'd like to ask a question before you're 7.
I'm kidding, Karen. Yeah, you go ahead.
Yeah, Ithaca High School has a process where they do election, there's campaigning that goes for like a week long or something, and they're at the cafeteria. So I guess everyone's continuing in their process because it's been working for so long.
Not necessarily, we'll learn. I know Dan has been working with or at least has been in conversation with both principals to have this conversation. One idea would be that half of that process continues, that maybe there's not an election of 4 reps, but an election of 2 reps. And then a different process by which 2 additions are appointed. Those are conversations that are still ongoing. I don't think the committee anticipated any change in LACS's process, given that the handbook has just been updated last year. So we thought that would probably continue, and we didn't see a problem with that continuing, other than making sure the number was 2 and not 3.
So if we're in communication with the principal at the high school, we're also in communication with the activities person, because it wasn't
Yes.
the principal
Yeah.
that was doing all this with the high school students, okay.
Yeah.
And in the additional provisions, it says the superintendent or designee is responsible for arranging an orientation, so we're putting this on the superintendent to arrange orientation when, and not that I wanna put things on the board clerk, but the board clerk sees a lot of orientation and training for the ex officio come through their email. So that could be a designee or.
No, I think you raise a good point. I think that when you say that, I'm thinking, it makes me think about 2 different orientations, and I think that the reason that the language is like that is thinking about like the orientation of the process that the school itself has created to, work with their advisor, again, talking about IHS specifically, but like working with their advisor and how they're going to, what strategies they're going to develop to like reach different students and blah, 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 blah. That kind of orientation of like, what does this mean? Like as a school rep for our school, what does this mean? I think is the way that we were talking about it, but you raise a good point. If, we really did go from like all the way of like, we want them to be like interns and we're gonna like, we as board members are gonna like take them under our wing and help them learn all about, and I think that we moved like so far away from that, that we should probably think about whether there are pieces about just like setting expectations of what the role means from the board perspective, or if the board just partners with the schools as they're creating their processes to make sure those things are covered in there.
I think during those conversations, the students like spoke up and said they didn't want to have like a mentorship.
Yeah.
And be too attached to the board and have more freedom of being able to speak on what they thought it was important.
I think definitely it's important to highlight that traditionally ex officio members of a board are members of the board with ex officio status. It was clear from our students that it was not what they were looking for.
Yeah.
They did not want to be considered members of the board. They wanted to be more student advocates in an ex officio role. And so that was partly what we're doing. The conversation about sort of onboarding, I think is a good question. That sentence specifically is pulled directly from the NISBA sample policy that was stated.
But that makes me question, because that would fall under the student ex officio board member under governance. If they're gonna be student advocates, then wouldn't that be a different?
This is the
process?
let's not revisit.
Yeah.
No, but you're right. I mean, this was the conversation we kept having
Yeah.
repeatedly. What was going to be the role? What were going to be the responsibilities? In terms of the onboarding, maybe it does make sense to change that to the board clerk. Move from there. The board clerk helps with our onboarding with new school board members, so it wouldn't be. I don't believe it'd be too onerous of a task. I'm talking about a position, not a person, but I'm looking at a person. So maybe that's a slight change in wording that we consider at the next meeting and have a conversation about. So thank you for raising.
Yeah, at the TST BOCES School Board Association monthly meetings, we brought this up where training, we see some of the emails that come through Central New York School Board Association on ex officio training. And most recently, I said it's unrealistic to have a training in Syracuse or elsewhere at 8:30 AM, that you expect students to be there. Or if it's a nice day outside. And I said to the executive director, is it possibility for them to join via Zoom and all, but now they want in person and all. So we can't always rely on outside training, so what internal
Yep.
training or what other NISBA training is available, especially since they're not willing to budge. Thanks.
There is NISBA training available, and there's workshops that our board reps get, and we can consider what an onboarding handbook would look like for our student reps as well. Yes, well,
So I have one real quick question. Apologies if this was already floated, but I didn't see anything about a term limit. Is that something that you guys considered at all?
I thought we mentioned you had to, what,
Your turn.
a year? Yeah,
Oh, I
well,
might have
no,
missed that.
it's for 1 year, but we have had board reps serve 3 years. Maybe,
Okay,
I don't think they
Yeah.
serve 4 because, though that would be possible under a new system.
yeah, within the current LACS policy, we allow for only two consecutive terms, but I was just curious if that was something.
Which is interesting because LACS is also accepting to serve 3 terms, so.
Accidentally.
I think IHS has a term because there's always graduated positions where they have someone coming in as a freshman or sophomore.
If I may clarify, it's not an explicit term limit in the policy, it's just a natural one coming from the fact that you have to be in IHS to run. So you the earliest you could start is in 10th grade realistically, so that gives you.
But under a new system, it is possible that someone could be appointed as a 9th grader. If there is an if that is the direction that the high school goes, and if there's an appointment process. So I think the question of term limits is a good one and one for us to consider to at least put into the policy or no term limits. Because we definitely have had folks from Ethical High School serve 3 years and folks from LACS serve 3 years.
Do they like run again though,
Yes.
if you get elected?
Yes.
Cause then we can still, like, they're not being elected for like 3 years, they're getting
No,
elected
right.
for one term and then, so. I feel like that's still, as long as well, I feel like one term requires them to rerun.
Yeah.
Which feels more important than saying like they can't win again.
Are there additional questions about this policy? It's still, again, this is the first draft. If there are additional recommendations, questions, folks can email them. We'll put it on to the June policy committee, hopefully for some sort of near final language to bring back to the board, first meeting in June. I see you, Lionel. Yes.
This is just something, me and Andrew brainstormed in one of our lunch meetings. We were earlier thinking about a system with a much more reduced number of board reps, of ex officios overall, so this applies more there. We were thinking about some form of alternates, especially for LACS having only 2, that you could have someone who, if neither of the members are available to go, then at that point they could be they could go, and that would be one way to preserve attendance, which is a big issue for people's policy. Yeah.
We're electing them. We kind of just, not to say that we've made a final decision, but because we use ranked choice voting, it's fairly easy for us to have a planned alternative, simply the next 2, because we're using a point system for our ranked choice, so simply the next 2 top point holders.
Yes, so we'll consider that as well. I'm sure Emily's taking all the notes, so thank you. All right. For right now, we wanted to introduce it to board members. Given the months of conversation, we know that the policy is not perfect, but for us, it was good enough to at least move the conversation forward. We welcome any and all questions or suggestions moving forward. But for this point in time, I will call the question for a first reading to send it back to the policy committee. So we will call the question, all in favor of this policy for a first reading. Fantastic. Thank you all for your thoughtful feedback. Greatly appreciated, and we'll bring another version to you. The last agenda item for this evening is agenda item 7.3. Is that what it is? And it was a resolution for the board organization meeting. This is for first reading, but let me give some caveat. Folks are able to see the policy. All we are doing is changing the language in the policy to match New York State law. So it's more of a requirement than it is anything else. And so if there is a supermajority vote of the board, we could pass this policy for adoption. We can make a motion to pass it for a first reading and adoption with a supermajority vote of the board. We thought that that's a good option, given the fact that, again, this is a requirement that we have to change it, not someone trying to say this is what our preference may be.
So motion
That's
to,
correct.
so motion to approve the resolution for the first reading and adoption of the draft policy title 2210 board organizational.
Second.
So moved by Jacob, second by Adam. I like the switch. Discussion, debate, questions about this policy, about this, it's a single sentence that's changed. It used to be, just for the community at home who may not be able to see it, historically, the reorganization meeting had to happen prior to July 7th, July 8th.
Within the first week of
Within the
July.
first week of July. Now what it states is that the reorganization meeting should happen prior to July.
The first Monday following July 20.
Prior to that.
Prior, right, so it's.
Prior to the first
Prior.
Monday following the.
Yes.
It's a strange thing.
Why did you, like, what was there?
It's New York State.
Oh, okay. That's fair.
I think they were finding difficulty, if I'm being real, July for public educators, particularly public administrators, is probably the only time that folks can get a quick break, and recognizing that trying to hold folks to a first week during a holiday week was not the smartest move, and people were finding difficulties, as we have found difficulties with our schedule as well. So I think that's the real rationale here.
So is everyone's policy saying with that whole word in on the day in July that it's on or before the Monday after July 20th? You know how many times I had to read that? Let me get my calendar.
I want to thank Emily, one, for catching that our policy was not up to date. And I will tell you, 99.99997% of the time, Emily has pulled directly from whatever New York State is telling us to do.
The language was as recommended by NISBA, pulled directly from the bill that's passed.
So Emily, 100% of the time, will check. Additional questions, comments? Hearing none, we'll call the question. All in favor of first reading and adoption? That is unanimous. That policy is hereby adopted. That is all of our business for this evening. As we know, we have a facilities, finance, and audit committee session Thursday, right? A little earlier than normal. A couple of candidate forums coming up, and most particularly the budget vote that's happening next Tuesday, May 19th. Yes.
Just one quick note for anyone looking that they have childcare starting at 5:30, but I believe the PTA council forum starts at 6. I think that they both start at the same time, the village and the PTA council on Wednesday and Thursday. So
Thank you for that. Fantastic. We encourage everyone to vote. Use your democratic process. We'll bring the meeting to a close. Thank you all very much.
Before you guys do, I'd like to give you again the email